and thank you for joining us for 30 Days of Native American Heritage Month. My name is Marissa, and today I am going to give you some podcast recommendations. So first up, I want to tell you about Telling Our Twisted Histories. It is an 11-episode miniseries and project of the CBC and Radio Canada. Each episode focuses on and explores one word and its meanings and how those meanings have been twisted by colonization. Host Genethio Horn guides listeners through conversations with more than 70 people from 15 different Indigenous communities whose lands now make up Quebec, New Brunswick, and Labrador. And words they discuss include savage and reconciliation, and there are some really fantastic conversations that come out of that. Next up is another short series called Good Fire. It aired in 2019, and it seeks to explore the concept of fire as a tool for ecological health. There are interviews with different people from all over the world about their different cultural burning practices and Indigenous knowledge and decolonizing science and ecological management. It is definitely really important today as we are dealing with more frequent and intense wildfires. So give that one a listen. In a similar vein, talking about Indigenous knowledge, I would also recommend the Native Seed Pod. It looks at Native foodways, ancestral seeds, cultural foodscapes, food sovereignty, and it highlights the importance of protecting and restoring agrobiodiversity. And it's also kind of a meditation on the questions, what seeds have we inherited and what seeds have we lost, and what seeds are we planting to nourish the future? If you are interested in the food part of that description, I would point you to the Toasted Sister podcast, which is all about Native American food. After contact, Indigenous foodways and knowledge were devastated, and the host, Andy Murphy, tries to remedy that by talking to Native chefs and foodies about what Indigenous cuisine is, where it comes from, and how it's used to connect people to their communities and to their origins. Another great podcast is called the Young and Indigenous Podcast. It is completely driven by the tribal youth of the Lummi Nation, the original peoples of the land and water that we now call Bellingham, Washington. It's an outlet for expression, to share untold stories, to preserve culture, learn their language, to inspire other youth, and it also is for people outside the community to learn more about them and their issues. Another great podcast is called the All My Relations Podcast. It is all about relationships and identities and what it means to be Native. They cover a really wide variety of topics from food sovereignty to Native mascots to fashion, DNA, identity politics, violence against Native women, birthing practices, and more. They also have a really wide variety of fantastic, knowledgeable guests, and it is extremely enlightening. If you like history, I would recommend The Secret Life of Canada. It is about Canada, the country we know and the stories we don't. It is co-hosted by two women. One is Leah Simone Bowen, who is a writer, performer, and producer, and a first-generation Canadian whose family hails from Barbados. And the other co-host is Fallon Johnson, a playwright and performer who is Mohawk and Tuscarora from Six Nations. Even though it is a Canadian-based show, there's a lot of overlap with US history, and they cover a lot of ground. So for example, they had an episode about the Indigenous roots of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and they had another episode about the term Uncle Tom and its roots and meanings. So really super wide variety of topics, and is very interesting. Finally, to fast forward away from history to the future is the Indigenous Futures Podcast. There are not very many episodes. I don't know if there will be more, hopefully, but it is a fantastic primer at Indigenous futurism. Host Teo Montoyo looks at how Indigenous peoples are visioning a collective future built on Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing, and is about reclaiming narratives in a post-apocalyptic reality. So check it out. And that is a extremely small sample of what is out there. If you have a favorite podcast by Native peoples about Native topics that I missed, please help other people find it by putting it in the comments. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye.